we have.
That's right. And also, as we're getting ready, so just let us know when y'all are ready to begin the program. And also, if you could give us a count for the number of attendees, that's students and adults in the area that's watching, that would help us track our attendance. Hey, y'all, can you let us know the age range that we're working with this morning, as well as the total count of attendees? And once you give us the go ahead, let us know how many are here in the age range, and we will, and if y'all are ready to begin.
We have 5 in this classroom.
Copy that. Thank you. And what about our second classroom? And it looks like we've got the older
We actually have
students
9.
today.
I'm sorry.
All right. We got 9 in one classroom. Do we have a second one? And I wanted to follow up with just one last time. Are y'all ready for us to begin the program, or do y'all need a few more minutes to get everybody settled?
You can begin. They can't talk to you, but you can begin.
All right. Well, my name is Thomas. I'm going to be working the studio here today. And up front, we've got Steven. So we have a bugs program for you. And if you're like me, you don't necessarily want them crawling all over you. But I have learned to gain an appreciation for what they do provide for us in this wonderful world that we live in. So without further ado, we're going to spend about a half hour learning from our animal expert, Steven. So if you could please turn your attention to Mr. Steven.
Such an intro. I love it. You said my name much more excitedly than you said bugs. So, all right. Hello again, Centers crew. Nice to see you again virtually. If you guys remember, my name is Steven. I'm one of the educators here at the museum. I do a whole bunch of stuff, but for the last few months, I've been doing animal programs for you guys. We've seen all sorts of stuff, really. I think we've seen some Arkansas animals. We've seen what animals like to eat. We saw some skulls and bones and things like that. We also saw some spooky animals back in October. And today, I think for some of you, you might feel like we're back on the spooky animals train because, as Thomas said, we are talking about bugs today. Now, when I say the word bugs, I'm sure that gives some of you the heebie-jeebies and the creepy crawlies because some of us aren't huge fans of bugs. But hopefully, by the end of our program, meeting some of our bugs here, if you don't love them, at the very least, you'll have a better appreciation for what they do and how they're really cool and important. So first off, before we get started, I will be saying bugs a lot during this program, but we will be looking at 2 very different but also similar kinds of animals. We're going to be looking at insects, and at the end, we're going to be looking at arachnids. And insects and arachnids have some very different things about them. But so I don't have to say insects and arachnids over and over again. I'm just going to be saying bugs a lot to refer to everybody we have. But we're going to start off and we're going to meet some of our insects here at the museum. Now, insects have a few characteristics that differentiate them from other animals. And Thomas, if you want to come bring a close-up cam over here, I have a little example here that's going to help us see exactly those differences. So here at the museum, you guys have seen all those skulls and bones a few weeks ago. Those are called our biofacts. But we don't just have skulls for our biofacts. We also have preserved specimens like this beetle here. Now, beetles and insects and arachnids, all that we're going to be seeing, have what's called exoskeletons. So they don't have bones on the inside like we do. Their whole outside is their skeleton. So when you preserve an insect or an arachnid, you generally preserve them like this. So this is an example of an insect, a really classic good example. And you can see kind of the main things that make an insect an insect. The first and most obvious thing is 6 legs, 3 on each side. Very easy to see there. And then what might be a little bit harder on this beetle specimen, but I promise it has it, and it will, and our 3 insect specimens will have them as well. There are 3 body parts. There's a head, the front bit. There's a thorax, the middle bit, and there's an abdomen, the back bit. And the reason that we're talking about those 3 parts and those 6 legs is because those are what's going to help us distinguish insects from arachnids, because arachnids are laid out a little bit differently. Now, the reason that I wanted to start off with a beetle as my example, and our first live animal that we're going to see are also beetles, is because there are a lot of beetles in the world. They're very representative of insects. I want you to think in your mind and guess just how many different types or species of beetles there are in the world. Some of you might be thinking, 40, not a lot. Some of you might be thinking 500, maybe a lot. Some of you might be thinking 2,000, maybe a whole lot. I promise you it's it's higher than you guys are guessing. If you added all the beetle species together in the world, all the different types of beetles, we've discovered about 400,000 different species of beetles, and we're still finding more. There are more beetle species than all the other species of animals added together, combined. And so beetles are a crazy huge chunk of life on Earth, which is why I wanted to start off with beetles for our insect, and for our first animal, bring out some of our beetles here at the museum. So these guys, we're going to be doing a lot of close-up shots today because these guys are really tiny. And so everyone say hello to our death-feigning beetles. I have one here, my blue one, and I have one here, my white one. Got a little light in my left hand and the blue in my right hand. And when I set these guys down, you might be thinking, although white actually popped up really quick. You might be thinking that it looks like when I picked them up and put them down, it looked like I actually killed my beetles. Now, there's a reason these guys are called death-feigning beetles, just like we talked about with opossums. The way that these guys keep themselves safe is by playing dead. So when they are threatened by a predator, or maybe just by me picking them up, they'll go completely limp. Sometimes you can set them down on their back and they'll stay there for a little while, but then eventually they'll roll back over. It's honestly kind of hard to tell when one of these actually passes away because they play dead so often. Now, these guys are really used to being handled by us, and so as you can see, they popped back out of playing dead pretty quickly. Honestly, usually the white one stays playing dead a little bit longer, but I guess he's feeling brave today in our little presentation cube here. All right, so these guys are a really cool example of an insect. We'll be able to see on the up-close cam when Thomas brings it up that they have those 6 legs, 3 on either side, and those 3 body parts, the front, the middle, the back, the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. And these guys are actually a really cool example of insects that we have here in the United States. These guys are from the southwestern United States, states like Arizona and Nevada and California. And if you couldn't tell from their little container here, these guys are found in deserts, specifically the Sonoran and the Mojave Desert. That's why they've got sand and rocks at the bottom of their little presentation space there. Now, animals that live in deserts are subjected to some really harsh and scary environments, but these guys have a lot of awesome adaptations to help them survive and thrive in their environment of choice. Now, if you couldn't guess, water is very difficult to come by in the desert. And so there's a reason that these guys actually have this bluish, whitish color all over them. That's actually basically a wax that's coating the entire outside of their body, kind of similar to candle wax. And what that does is it allows them to keep and retain whatever moisture they do get. So they don't lose a lot of water. Like we're constantly losing water from sweating, but these guys do not lose a lot of water because it's very difficult to come by. Also, for you, those of you who have a little bit of eagle eye going on, you might have noticed that they have some food in the back of their little container here. These guys do like to eat fruits and veggies and plants, as you can see. But in the desert, it doesn't generally pay to be picky. So these guys are an example of omnivores. We talked about that again with our opossums. They will eat plants and fruits, and those are a great source of water. But if they come across something that's dead, a bug, a rat maybe, they're not going to pass it up. They're not going to turn their antenna up at it because that's a really good source of protein and also a good source of water. So these guys have adapted to these very harsh conditions to keep themselves safe. Now, not only do you have to worry about drying out and finding food in the desert, you also have to worry about predators because there are animals that live out there. And these beetles are called either death feigning beetles or ironclad beetles. Now, when you think of the word ironclad, you think of something really strong, really hard. These guys, their exoskeleton, their outsides, is basically like a suit of armor. It's incredibly difficult to crush or puncture, which helps keep them safe from predators. It also helps keep them safe when they're playing dead. If you can imagine they're up on a plant and suddenly they get spooked by an animal, they're going to go stiff and probably fall off that plant. And if you fall from a big height and you're really small, it could be bad for you. But these guys have such a strong outside, such a strong exoskeleton that they can fall, hit the ground, and be just fine. So these guys are really cool, a really excellent example of insects, and just kind of awesome in their own right. See if my white beetle here will play dead for us. As I said, these guys are really used to being handled, so he flips over pretty quick, even after going stiff for a little bit. I think these guys are really fun, and they're actually kind of making an inroad into being popular pets. They're pretty easy to care for, so I like that we have them here. All right, an excellent example of an insect for our first go. So we've got beetles as a very representative species. Our next animal that we're going to see is is a type of animal that you've seen before, but you haven't seen this one yet, and they're kind of special in their own right, which is why I wanted to bring them out. Another excellent example of insects. And since these guys are small, it's a lot easier for Thomas to get them on camera if I have this little presentation space set up for them. But these guys aren't found in the desert. They like something a little different. So I'm going to kind of dress up their space a little bit differently. All right. So our next animals that we're bringing out are cockroaches. Now, I believe we saw the cave roaches before and possibly our spotted roaches. But these guys are a little bit different and really, really cool. Say hello to our Madagascar hissing cockroaches. So we're going from North America to Africa, specifically the island of Madagascar. I'm sure on this camera they kind of blend in a little bit, so you guys will be able to see that a little bit better when we go close up. So we've talked about cockroaches before. We know a few things about them. Generally, they're going to be omnivores, just like our death feigning beetles. They help clean up the environment, clean up all that dead, gross, rotting stuff. The Madagascar hissing cockroaches are a little bit special. They have kind of their own unique little things. So these guys actually mostly eat fruit. They eat fruits and veggies. They're kind of found in tropical forests and things like that. And so while they will eat some high protein sources like meat or whatever, they're mostly going to go after fruits and plant material. But they're still helping clean up the environment, cleaning up all that rotting, nasty stuff. Now, these guys are really big, not quite as big as our cave roaches, but if you remember seeing our cave roaches, you might remember that those guys had big old wings on their back. These guys, as you can see, do not have wings. They are flightless cockroaches, so they spend most of their time on the ground, maybe climbing up some trees or something. But, of course, the thing that we want to know is, why are they called hissing cockroaches? Now, these guys have a very cool and special defense mechanism. Ooh, hello, hi. pick up my, I believe, my female here. If you guys are able to see on our close-up camera, you might see that along their back, they have these small little black dots. Now, those aren't just for show. Those little black dots indicate these holes called sphericals. They're basically little holes along the sides of their bodies. They kind of help them breathe and respire, but they also help keep them safe. Now, you might be wondering, why would a hole on the side of your body help keep you safe? Well, the reason that these guys are called hissing cockroaches is because their main defense, if they're threatened by the predator, is to suddenly make a really loud, scary hissing sound, much louder than you would expect a tiny little creature to make, which generally is enough to scare off anything that's trying to eat them. The way they do that is kind of like an accordion, if you know that instrument, or if you don't, a whoopee cushion. When you play an accordion, you squeeze it together, air comes out, makes notes. A whoopee cushion, you sit on it, squeeze it down, you know what comes out. And so these guys operate in a very similar way. They will flatten down their bodies, just like a whoopee cushion, expel air, push air out of those sphericals, out of those holes, and that makes this really loud hissing sound, kind of like steam very quickly escaping a pipe. Now, that's about all they have to defend themselves. They don't have a hard bite. They aren't very fast, but usually that loud of a noise suddenly coming from that small of a creature is enough to tell a predator, whoa, I don't know what's going on there. I don't want to mess with it. So these guys have their own kind of unique way of keeping themselves safe. Now, I believe that I have a female right back here and a male right over here. It's a little bit difficult to tell them apart. Generally, the females are going to be, they have these little bumps on the backs of their heads. But if you look at our male, they're a little bit covered in dirt right now. Those bumps are much more pronounced. And this is a pretty small young male too. So those bumps or horns are only going to get bigger. That's one of the good ways that we tell these guys apart. Now, I know that people generally, especially here in Arkansas, we have a lot of cockroaches and they aren't huge fans, but we know that cockroaches are incredibly important to our environment. And they're also an excellent example of insects. We can see our male walking along with his 6 legs here. It's a little bit hard to see the 3 body parts, but we've got the head under this kind of plate. We have the thorax and we have the abdomen. And of course, one of the nice things that our cockroaches show off is some lovely antenna. Our girl has some really long antenna here, and these are what help her sense her environment. Not only do those antenna help with touch sensitivity, they also help with tasting and smelling. So that's how they find all that delicious, gross, rotting food that they love so very much. So even though they're kind of creepy crawly to us, I'm a big fan of them, and they're incredibly important to our environment. So I hope at the very least you have a little bit better appreciation for them. All right, everyone say goodbye to our cockroaches. And put these guys back in their little travel enclosure here. Now, I'm extremely excited to show you guys our next 2 animals. And we're going to have a little bit of change of scenery for these guys, because these are 2 of our newest additions to the Museum of Discovery. In the last month, we've gotten several new animals. If you guys ever get the chance to come check us out, we have, oh boy, what did we get? We got 2 day geckos, which are very pretty. They're out on the floor. We got some jeweled praying mantises, another excellent example of an insect. And we got a whole colony. This is going to be a little hard to see without our close-up cam, but I picked the biggest ones I could find, so hopefully you get a good look. We got a whole colony of Vietnamese stick insects, or walking sticks. Obviously, these guys are from Vietnam, across the world in Asia. And I've got a nice little perch for these guys here so they feel nice and comfortable and feel like they are camouflaged. But with Thomas's close-up cam, he should be able to get a good look at them. Now I have that very large brown one and this slightly smaller green one here. The brown one's a bit older. They get larger and a little more brown as they age. There we go. There you go. All right. So these are our Vietnamese walking sticks, and these guys are very similar to stick insects that we have here in Arkansas. Are you guys fighting? What's going on here? These guys are very similar to stick insects that we have here in Arkansas. Now, of course, the main way that these guys keep themselves safe and survive is pretending to be a stick. Right now, they're not doing a great job at it. There's a lot of flailing around going on. Generally, once they calm down, what they're going to do for most of their time is stay completely still and usually extend their front legs out to try and look as much like a stick as possible. You guys are doing a terrible job of camouflaging yourselves. I know exactly where you are. Oh my goodness. So that's an excellent way of keeping yourself safe. It's basically a very specialized version of camouflage known as mimicry. These guys will mimic a natural object to try and keep other animals off their trail. They really want the top of this stick. The brown one's just pushing him down. So these guys have evolved this way of keeping themselves safe, and they really commit to the act. When they go around searching for leaves, they'll kind of slowly sway in the wind as they walk, pretending to be a stick swaying in the wind. And if things go really south, if they get attacked by a predator, these guys will just kind of go limp and fall off the tree or the bush wherever they are. Now, that can be a pretty hard impact for them, but kind of like our death feigning beetles, they're pretty tough. And so just by pretending to be basically a falling stick, not only do they kind of escape the predator, but hopefully the predator gives up because they're just like, ah, that's a stick, whatever. Now, these guys are not omnivores or carnivores. These guys are herbivores. They love eating plants and leaves and things like that. So that's what they spend most of their life doing. Now, unfortunately, these guys don't live particularly long. They only live about 5 to 7 months, so it's a pretty fast and loose life being a Vietnamese walking stick. But these guys have a very interesting and kind of weird, if I'm being perfectly honest, survival strategy. I can almost guarantee you that our two stick insects here are girls, females. As a matter of fact, I can almost guarantee you, I'd be willing to bet a pretty good amount of money that most, if not all, of our Vietnamese walking sticks in our colony are females. These guys reproduce, make babies, through a process called parthenogenesis. That's a very big word. That's your big word for the day. Parthenogenesis basically means that they clone themselves. So female stick insects are able to produce eggs without having a male around, and those eggs, when they hatch, are exact clones or copies of the mother, which means they're going to be female. So this is a survival strategy that some animals that live in very difficult conditions might have a hard time finding mates. They adopt so that they can survive even in the absence of mates. So in the wild, it's extremely rare to have male Vietnamese walking sticks. In captivity, you can have some, but it's still a very low number because you can, introduce males into their enclosure. But there's a pretty good chance that we've got two girls here, and in a few months, they'll probably be producing eggs of their own. So it's a really weird survival strategy that we're not used to, but it's one of the coolest things that I get to talk about here at the museum. Getting a nice shot of the brown one over here. Now, we're about to move on from insects, so I just want to look one more time at those things that make an insect an insect. We've, of course, got 1, 2, 3 stretched out in the front here, 4, 5, 6 legs, a good calling card of insects. And I feel like as we've gone on, it's gotten harder and harder to distinguish those 3 body parts. But I promise you, they've got that head, thorax, and abdomen that helps distinguish them from our next group of animals, which is arachnids. So, moving on to arachnids, everyone say goodbye, walking sticks. And I'm going to put them just on the side here. They'll just be chilling on the branches over here with my death feigning beetles. There you guys go. Hang out a little bit. All right, so we're going to change tack for our last animal. We're going to do arachnids. Now, again, I've been saying bugs to refer to both of those groups, insects and arachnids, and they have some similarities, but also some things that make them very different. Insects and arachnids both have exoskeletons, those skeletons on the outsides of their bodies. But the things that I've been focusing on, the legs and the body parts, are how we tell those two groups of animals apart. Arachnids, instead of 6 legs, have 8 legs, 4 on each side. And instead of 3 body parts, they have 2. The head and the thorax are combined into one piece, the cephalothorax, we can just call it the head. And there's also the abdomen, the back part. So things like spiders, tarantulas, spoiler alert for what's coming up, scorpions, and things like mites are all examples of arachnids. They're very similar to insects. They're both arthropods. They both have exoskeletons, but they have their own unique differences. Now, we've seen a tarantula before. We saw our brown tarantula Harry, an Arkansas native, back when we talked about Arkansas animals. But we're going a lot bigger this time. We're bringing out, I believe, the biggest tarantula that we have here at the museum, and one of my personal favorites. I think she's a big sweetheart. All right. We are hanging out with, Thomas, we can move to the close-up cam here. Ooh. We are hanging out with Rosie, our rose-haired tarantula. Now, Rosie is a native of Chile, the country of Chile. And so she is from South America. We're going all over the world today because, of course, there are insects and arachnids all over the world. And even though she's kind of curled up a little bit, I hope you can see those things that we talk about that makes arachnids distinct. She's got 8 legs, 4 on each side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 2 body parts, a big abdomen in the back and a cephalothorax at the front. So we're going back. All right. So I see. Ooh, split screen. We're getting fancy now. I love it. Now, I'm going to try and pick Rosie up here to see if we can get a little bit of a better shot of those legs. Hello. Hi. There we go. Now, when I have people count Rosie's legs, they do get a little bit confused sometimes because it does look like she has 2 extra legs in the front, which would give her 10. However, these are very specialized limbs called pedipalps. And so pedipalps are not actually used for walking, even though it looks like she's resting those 2 limbs on my hand right now. Those pedipalps are basically like little spider arms. They help her feel things, they help her move and manipulate her prey, and they also, with the males, help with making babies, which is very strange. They have kind of specialized arms for making babies, but that's something I'll let you learn about on your own. There we go. Now we can get some nice close looks at those 8 legs and those 2 body parts. Tarantulas, of course, like we talked about before, are pure carnivores. Are you not going to stay in the demonstration space? Are you going to walk around the table? That's fine. Tarantulas are pure carnivores. These Rosie likes to eat crickets here at the museum. Out in the wild, they can eat a variety of insects, like we've been talking about. These guys can also potentially go after some smaller mice and rats, and maybe some small lizards or other reptiles. They do have a venom. Now, to us, it's not very toxic because, of course, they're really just using it to kill things like crickets that are much smaller than us, but it is about equivalent to a bee sting, bee venom. So if you are allergic to bee stings, you're probably allergic to tarantula bites. And so what these guys will do is, as you can tell, Rosie's not particularly fast. Tarantulas are very large spiders, so they're not going to be hanging out on webs, and they're not going to be really running after their prey. These guys are ambush predators. So Rosie will wait in a burrow. She'll put some webbing out in front of that burrow that helps her feel when her prey walks by. And once her prey walks by and steps on that webbing, she'll leap out, grab onto it, and sink her fangs into it. That venom does a couple things. Of course, it paralyzes and kills her prey, but it also has digestive juices inside of it. That sounds really gross. What does that mean? These guys actually start to digest their prey from the inside. They basically turn, let's say, a cricket into a cricket bread bowl, soup in a bread bowl. And so they'll kind of liquefy the insides of that cricket and suck it out with almost a straw-like mouth. So once they're done, they've just got kind of a husk of a cricket that they leave behind, which is really nasty, but also, I think, particularly kind of cool. I love learning about the ways that predators catch and eat their prey. So even though it's pretty gross, I think it's still pretty awesome. Now, Rosie is, of course, a much bigger tarantula than we saw before. Did she come at you? Oh, it's freaking out. Rosie is a much bigger tarantula than we saw before, but she's not even close to the biggest kind of tarantula that there is in the world. I'm not sure the best way to present this, Thomas. I don't know if we want this up or if we want this down. Sounds good. We have another biofact here. It is, up a little bit. This is a preserved steely blue. We got it. There we go. A steely blue leg bird eater tarantula. We'll just call it a bird eater tarantula. And this is an example of one of the largest types of tarantulas in the world. The bird eater tarantulas are gigantic. There's one even larger than this called the Goliath bird eater. Now, even though they have that name, they're not actually particularly known for eating birds. If you can imagine, a spider that spends a lot of its time on the ground is going to have a hard time catching high-flying birds. But these guys are known to eat large mammals, snakes, lizards, and the occasional bird. So you probably are thanking me, thinking, "Oh my gosh, I'm glad that Rosie is the largest tarantula we have here at the museum, and we didn't bring out anything any larger." But of course, looking at this biofact, we can see those 8 legs, those 2 body parts, and so I like to bring it out, 1, to show the diversity of size in our tarantulas and arachnids, and 2, as a very good example of the body parts that these guys have and what they look like. Get a little side-by-side shot there. Very nice. Rosie, say hi to your cousin. A little bit bigger than you are. So hopefully I haven't creeped you guys out too badly. I hope you enjoyed learning about bugs, insects, and arachnids, what makes them similar and what makes them different, and how they're important, some really cool things about them. At this time, as you guys know, we're going to move on to questions. I'm going to hang out here with Rosie. I'll see if she wants to get back into her little presentation space here, and Thomas will help us facilitate some questions.
Let's start things off with a big round of applause for Steven. Excellent work. And I will work to get a little split screen up for you guys so y'all can see me too. We'll bring this up. Hey guys, hey y'all. Wow, that was really cool. I like getting some of those shots of those, especially the Vietnamese walking sticks. I like those.
I'm very excited we have them. They're probably my favorite new addition.
And I'm looking over at them right now. I can't see them at all.
Let me make sure they're still there.
We have some time for questions from you all. So if you want to unmute your mic, and we'll get the questions to Steven, and he'll answer them to the best of his abilities. So what's our first question?
It was difficult for me to find the stick insects. You guys always have fantastic.
Can you hear me?
I'm excited to hear them.
Yes, we can hear you now. I heard you just a moment ago, but it looks like it's muted now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
What gender are the beetles?
Oh, that's a great question. I have no idea. Some bugs, it's very easy to tell. Spiders in particular have a lot of what we call sexual dimorphism, big difference in looks between boys and girls. Tarantulas are actually a little bit more difficult.
We can't hear
We
you.
can't hear
They
anything.
live a lot longer. With the beetles,
All right, hang on. We are not able to hear us for some reason.
how about now? Can we hear me?
It's looking like it's coming through on our end, but let's. Steven, let me make sure your battery didn't die.
I'm still good. I'm still green.
Are y'all able to hear my microphone? Let me double check some stuff real quick. It looks like we're sending out audio on our end.
Can you guys hear my microphone? Can everyone hear me?
It's coming through on my end.
Thumbs up if you can hear me.
I wonder. Hey Beth, if you want to text me to see if you can hear me too, I'll take a look at my phone.
It's because Brittany's here. She's cursing it.
All right. Yeah, let us know if you're still having trouble hearing us. I'll do a real quick. Let me. All right, I've muted and unmuted, so maybe that would have changed something. I'll do another
Are the
test real
roaches
quick.
edible?
Test on the mic.
Can you guys hear my microphone? Thumbs up if you can.
All right, so Beth is saying that she can hear us. It sounds like our audio is working. So if you're having some difficulty, you may want to check your audio settings. So let us know if, well, if you can't hear me, it's hard to let us know if you can't hear me. But I did hear a question just a moment ago. So if you could repeat that question for me, we'll get that answered for you. Are those cockroaches edible? Brittany did the translation for us. Thank you.
Let me wrap up the first question. What's the gender of the beetles? I'm not sure. Some bugs it's very easy to tell. With those guys, it's very difficult to tell. So I'm not actually sure if they're boys, girls, or a mix of both. Are the cockroaches edible? This is actually a very good question. Here in the U.S., we are not all about eating bugs. We think that's kind of creepy, kind of gross. I've eaten, those kind of flavored crickets that they have as kind of novelty jokes. However, in different parts of the world, eating bugs is a very common and cultural thing. For example, tarantulas I won't say an exact country because I'm going to get it wrong. Tarantulas are considered a delicacy in some places. Crickets and worms are excellent food other places. And cockroaches are also delicious, excellent food, excellent source of protein. I don't know if Madagascar hissing cockroaches are a very common food source, but other cockroaches certainly are.
And I will let y'all in on a little story. So some time ago, Steve and I were talking about this very subject, and it was explained to me that there's cricket powder that they'll basically grind up crickets into this little powder, and it just adds good protein to whatever you're eating, and it has just kind of a buttery, nutty flavor, not much flavor at all. So this guy went ahead and bought some, and I've been putting it in my smoothies for a month or two now, and it tastes just fine. So I've been enjoying some cricket protein over the past couple months. So weird, I know, but it's all in the name of science.
It is very common in other parts of the world, just not here.
I'm gonna switch it over. We're gonna take a look at what Steven's doing
I was
because
gonna
he's
say, if you could bring a close-up cam, Thomas.
yeah, we've got some action happening.
Something really cool is going on. If you could bring the close-up cam on her abdomen, her backside. So Rosie, oh, she was. Rosie is showing off as she's walking around on her abdomen there, her backside. She was showing off her spinnerets. So even though these guys don't hang on webs like smaller spiders, they do still put down webbing. It helps them feel and sense things. And she produces that webbing through these small little limb-looking things on her abdomen called spinnerets. And she was waving them around as she was walking around. Well, there she goes. See as she gets comfortable with the camera. You're going to fall off the edge. I don't want you to. There we go. She's very interested as to what's going on the edge of this table. Oh, there goes the spinnerets. So as she's putting those down, they're kind of helping her feel her way. And if she gets comfortable enough, she might start putting some webbing down just to kind of make herself feel a little more comfortable. There we go. All right. Brittany, do we have any more questions?
No, we haven't heard any.
Now that Thomas is in full Nat Geo mode over here. No questions. I think, or is it time for our next group? Do we have to get the youngers on? Oh, we don't have our younger group at 10:30? All right. Well, thank you guys for joining me for learning about bugs. I hope you guys weren't too creeped out. If you had any questions that you couldn't get answered, as always, you can email Beth and she'll get those questions to me. And I look forward to seeing you guys next time when we talk about, I'm not sure. We'll see what we're talking about next time I see you guys virtually. So have a great day. Thank you for joining me talking about bugs. And I'll see you guys again soon.
Bye, y'all.
Keep walking.